Hi everyone, I'm Taylor Davidson. I'm with Fairy God Boss, been here coming up on a year. I'm a diversity consultant with Fairy God Boss, so working with enterprise companies to help them achieve their diversity initiatives. And then with Fairy God Boss, we're the largest career community for women. Our mission is to improve the workplace for women by increasing transparency. Through doing that, we offer a number of free resources like anonymous company reviews, job listings, different articles, webinars, podcasts, virtual recruiting events, all to really help women on their career journey and help bring other women up throughout their career journey. Our community is great with that as well. And the whole goal is to help women succeed in their careers. And so before we get started, just a note on Q&A. Everyone will be taking questions and at the end of the webinar. And so anytime you have a question, go ahead and pop it in the chat. I'll collect it and then I can facilitate that with Terry at the end. The webinar also will be recorded. It's actually being recorded right now. So just a heads up, feel free, you can rewatch it anytime. And so we are here with Terry Coyne today, and Terry is a career and leadership coach. She specializes in career management, communication, and professional development. Her coaching style has been informed over 2 decades of experience as a senior technology leader, managing diverse and highly skilled global teams. She is currently the director of programs at Get5. So Terry, thank you so much for being here today, and I will turn it over to you.
Oh, it's so great to be here. Thank you so much for having me, Taylor. And welcome, everybody. And thanks for joining today and for sharing your locations with us as we were getting started. As Taylor mentioned, I am a career and leadership coach affiliated with an organization called Get5. And for those of you that may not be familiar with Get5, we're an award-winning outplacement and career transition solution. We kind of take a modern approach to job search and career transition, and you're going to hear a little bit about the approach today. We kind of back that up with a robust technology. We have a very active website with lots of resources to kind of push you through the career transition process. We also have a very, very robust coaching community. So we can pair you with a coach like myself, and we can help you with skill gap identification and training. So we're really here to assist in all aspects of a career transition. For those of you who might be interested in our services, we're offering a 20% off our Career Insider program. We have a few different options, but if you're interested in even exploring that, you can go to our website at get5.com/career insider. And if you type in the promo code FGB20, you could get 20% off our services. And again, I'll show this slide at the end of the presentation in case you might be interested. Okay, so today, let's get down to the meat of it. Today's topic is the do's and don'ts of an effective job search. And no matter where you're at right now, some of you may be in the process of looking, some of you may be considering looking, and some of you may be thinking, you know what, let me just kind of get myself together and get prepared for doing a search. Wherever you're at in the process, I think you're going to get a lot out of this. So we're going to talk about the fundamentals of a good search. We're going to identify, help you work on identifying techniques that will work for you. One of the things that often freaks people out in a search is they're like, well, I'm not good at this and I'm not good at that. Well, let's focus on what you are good at. But first you need to know what the different options are. You want to optimize your effectiveness of online applications. This is a really important piece of information that I'm looking forward to sharing with you. And then I'm going to offer an action plan for 3 ways you can ignite a more effective job search. And of course, I'll leave time for questions at the end. And as Taylor mentioned, you can post those questions in the chat box, and then we'll cover them at the end. Okay, so if I was just going to describe the journey of transitioning from one position to another and melt that together with the Get5 approach, this is kind of what it looks like. You start by assessing and envisioning your ideal opportunity. We call that knowing what you want. And you cannot underestimate the importance of taking the time to do this. Once you know what you want, you now want to go after it, right? So you want to select targets that are going to reflect what you want. Then you build a target map, which is sort of a plan for how you're going to tap into these different targets. Then you create a campaign that reflects what you want. That's your resume, your LinkedIn profile, your pitch, your cover letters. Then you want to leverage 4 approaches to uncovering opportunities. Once you start to get meetings, you want to engage and influence with a consultant mindset. And you want to keep multiple opportunities going and then be ready to know and negotiate your worth. Okay, I'm going to go through each of these because these are really the building blocks of an effective search. So let's start with knowing what you want. A lot of people assume that that means, well, I just want a similar job than what I have or have. That may be true, and that's fine. But so many of us never take time to take a breath and step back and really think about, what do I enjoy doing? What do I like? What do I want to do? If anything was possible, what would I want to do? This really helps us start to think about how we can pivot either to a new career or possibly a different position. A lot of people feel the most effective thing for them is going to be to take this approach of, I'll do anything. I'm up for anything. And I have clients that say this to me all the time. Well, here's the thing. If you're open to anything, you're never really messaging effectively, and you're leaving it up to other people to decide or figure out from your resume what you might be good for. Not effective, right? You can have one or more interests, absolutely, but you want to be clear about what those are. Okay, so how do you know what you want? How do you think about it? Well, you want to step back and think about ideal opportunities, right? What are some of the things in your life that you enjoyed? You know, you may be really good at budget management, but it may not be enjoyable to you. So although that's a skill you might, you can leverage, it may not be a skill that you're going to look for as the top 5 skills in a job posting, right? So you want to think about it. You really want to step back and think, not only what am I good at, but what do I enjoy doing? And what do I enjoy doing, and what skills are associated with that? That helps you start to look at the types of roles that might be a good match for you. Give yourself permission to consider different options. Remember, at this stage, it's just an exercise. You're not doing anything else but brainstorming and kind of imagining what other possibilities could exist for me. One of the most effective things you can do is reach out to former colleagues or mentors, trusted friends, to get their insights. A really powerful question to ask people is, when we work together, what would you say was my greatest strength? Or, I'm thinking of expanding my search a little bit. What kinds of roles could you see me in? Sometimes people can see things that we are good at that we're not aware of. We may think we're good at one thing, and other people may perceive us as having strengths in areas we never even imagined. Okay, so getting feedback, and it doesn't have to be formal, it can just be very informal, but you'd be surprised at how enlightening that can be. What you don't want to do is assume there are no options outside of what you've been doing. This often happens when we've either been laid off, or we've been unhappy in a situation, or we've just been in a job too long. We start to think, this is all there is for me, there's nothing else, and that really limits our thinking. And at this stage, you want to expand your thinking, right? You want to just open things up. I always say with clients, if I had a magic wand and I could wave it right now, what would you want to be doing? Don't stop yourself before you even answer that question. Don't cut yourself off and go, well, you don't have a magic wand and I got to pay the bills. Absolutely. But give yourself permission to imagine what that is, so you can uncover what some of those aspects or elements might be, and those things might be possible. Don't avoid assessing your abilities. Sometimes people will say to me, I have to get my resume done. I have to get my LinkedIn profile. I don't have time to think about what I'm good at. Well, as we move into the building of the resume, you'll see why that is important to know what you're good at and what your strengths are. Okay, so once you know what you want, you can start that process of getting what you want. And getting what you want means choosing targets that reflect the opportunities you're interested in. And when we talk about a target, we're talking about a role or a title, like a director of professional development. An industry, IT. A geographic location, Greater New York City area. Those three things are one target. You can have more than one target, and you should have more than one target, but you start with one target. It zeroes in. I figured out what I want. I really like working with professional development. I really like working in IT. I want to stay in the Greater New York City area. I would like a director position or possibly higher. That's a target. So when selecting a target, you want to do your research. Do your research. Start Googling different positions. Start with your position. What kinds of opportunities are out there? Sometimes the pivot you want to make is not with your position. It may be your industry, or it actually may be your geographic location. What you want to do, however, is research to see how many director of professional development opportunities are open right now, right? In IT, right? If I see there's 3, that's telling me, okay, I could still keep that as a target, but maybe I need to expand outside of my industry, right? Because we're trying to get a sense of how many opportunities could there be, right? Consider 2 to 3 targets. Sometimes it's, the same industry and location. It might be just different titles, okay? You want to include your target information in your pitch and networking meetings. So when you're, Zooming with someone or, social distancing, at a gathering and someone says, what are you doing? You want to be as specific as possible. Well, I work in professional development and I'm looking for a director position in an IT company. I'm interested in software. You want to be as specific as possible. That's the easiest way for people to help you, is to be clear about what you want. See, it all goes back to being clear about what you want. Try not to choose one target with limited opportunities. So if I start to research my director of professional development role in an IT organization and I see there aren't a lot, that might not be the best target, or it might be okay, but I may need to supplement it with other targets. Right? Sometimes what we do is we zero in on a target, we only think about that, then we get discouraged because we see that there aren't a lot of opportunities. If the more senior you are, you're going to see this. If you're going for a marketing associate role, you're going to see a lot more opportunities than if you're going for a chief marketing officer role. That's why you want to really diversify with your targets, because then you can go after multiple things. You don't want to ignore the hidden job market. And when I say that, I mean the hidden job market are positions that are about to become open that are not posted yet, right? And there is a large number of positions that get filled that never get posted. Don't discount those. When you start to select a target, there are multiple ways to figure out where those opportunities might be, starting with creating a list of target companies you would love to work at and reaching out cold to who you might think might be the hiring manager at that company. Again, that hiring manager may know that they're going to have a position opening up in August or a position opening up in September, and making that connection with that person could help you along the way. So that's what we call the hidden job market. All right. Depending on the targets you pick, you don't want to use the same resume, right? If I'm talking to an IT audience, I can use more IT jargon than if I've decided that I'm going to talk to an HR audience. I'm going to change the way I'm describing things in my resume so it doesn't sound like I'm using all this IT jargon. That alienates the resume reviewer. So knowing your targets is really important. Okay, now I know what I want and I know the targets I'm going after, right? So the most successful job search focuses on understanding the needs and challenges of your target opportunities and creates messaging that signals you're a good match. In other words, connect the dots for people. This is one of the things that the biggest mistake candidates make is they create this one-size-fits-all resume, and then they're like, I can use this for all these different opportunities, and they just think the person's going to read a 3-page resume and figure out that there's 4 accomplishments on page 3 that indicate that you would be a good fit for that position. No. I want to pick up that resume and I want from the get-go to say, oh my gosh, look, this person, it would be a really interesting candidate for me to talk to. So do the work to connect the dots, all right? So how do you do that? Well, you start by thinking of your personal marketing materials. That's your LinkedIn profile, your resume, your cover letter, as a story you're telling, okay? All of us in our careers have probably played more than one different role, okay? So I have done a lot of learning development. I've also done a lot of project management. If I'm going to go for it, one of my targets is as a project manager, I'm not going to tell my learning development story. I'm going to talk about on my resume any learning development I may have done that I could say through the lens of project management, right? I'm going to tell the story of how I'm a good project manager. And I'm going to look at my accomplishments through the lens of how does that map to the project manager skills, okay? I'm going to reach out to people in my network that may work in my target, right? Because then I can get feedback from them. You know, could you take a look at my resume? Do you think I'm tailoring this enough to your industry? Do you think I'm tailoring this enough to a project manager role? And then I'm going to create a targeted resume. So if I'm going after a project manager, I'm going to have a project manager resume. If I'm going after learning development, I'm going to have a learning development resume. And I'm going to create thoughtful cover letters. And you'll see why that can be important in a couple of minutes. I'm not going to create a one-size-fits-all kitchen sink kind of resume. I'm not going to use a template or a form cover letter, right? I'm going to take a thoughtful approach, right? I'm going to connect the dots. The question they're always asking is, why this person? Why should I read more about this person? Why should I call them in? So I'm going to go out of my way to tell a story that's compelling. I'm not going to be robotic in my responses. This happens a lot. We practice and write a pitch and people say, so tell me a little bit about yourself. And you say, I am a seasoned professional with over 20 years of experience. And you know, if you're boring yourself when you're talking about yourself, it's not a good sign. So I always suggest, you know, start with a passion statement. Even when you're writing cover letters or you're doing phone screenings or interviews, when they say, tell me a little bit about yourself, start off with something that's powerful because it puts you in a really strong, positive place. Like, well, first of all, I love what I do. And I've been so fortunate to have the opportunities I've had and to be able to make the impact that I think that I've made. Boom, positive, high energy, you feel good. Now you can move into the details. Okay, so now you kind of know what you want, you know the targets you're going after, and you've tailored your story appropriately. Now you've got to get meetings, right? A well-rounded search is thoughtful, strategic, and focused on getting meetings through networking, direct contact, job boards, and search firms. Okay, those are the 4 ways to get meetings. So almost all of you know what networking is, right? And you know, networking is used throughout your search. It's not just at the beginning when you reach out to people to, you know, have them help you connect opportunities. You can use it as you're uncovering opportunities, right? So if you see a job posting for Acme division, you can look on your LinkedIn profile, your connections, and say, oh my God, Taylor used to work at Acme. Let me reach out to her and see if she knows the hiring manager. So networking is something you can use throughout your search. Networking is not necessarily going into a networking event or jumping in on a Zoom networking event and introducing yourself and being all aggressive, because this is what people think networking is. Networking is leveraging connections to give, to offer yourself, and to get assistance. It's a give and get, all right? These percentages are based on a landing survey we did with Get 5 clients on how they landed their jobs. So the top way was networking. Right behind that was job boards. There's a way to leverage that. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Right behind that was search firms. Now, search firms are valuable based on your role and your seniority. If you're early in your career, search firms may not be as valuable to you unless you have a highly specialized skill set. A lot of times that's like, you know, a technical skill set. And the 4th way is direct contact. And that's when you reach out directly and introduce yourself to a potential hiring manager without knowing them. Those are the 4 ways. Now, these percentages can shift based on the role, as I mentioned earlier. So you'll notice in these 3 pie charts, you'll see for directors and VP level, networking's 50%, right? Job boards are a little bit less. But for staff and managers, you'll see networking is 26% and job boards are 40%. So you really want to think about what's your level, what's your position, and what's your industry, right? What are your targets? And that will help you understand how much time should I be devoting to each of these 4 techniques. I can tell you, based on working with hundreds of clients, the people that are most successful in their search utilize all 4 of these techniques. Now, some don't, you know, you'll put more energy into one than you might in another, but you're still utilizing all 4 approaches. Okay. So what you want to do, I just said that, make the time you allocate to each method proportional to your target, your role, and your industry. Don't underestimate direct contact, especially if you create a compelling cover letter. So for example, if you have a very specific target, I had a client who did data visualization and she worked in nonprofit. She knew there were a limited amount of roles available in nonprofit doing what she did. So for her, she built a list of every nonprofit that she could find that had a role that she was interested in doing data visualization. And then she wrote an incredibly compelling cover letter asking for a meeting. And she got meetings that way. That's how she ended up getting her job, through direct contact. Always, 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 when you're networking, be clear about what your ask is, right? So if you're going down the networking path and you know people that might be able to help you, Be clear. Don't do, if you look over in the don't section, you'll see the third one is blast your resume out to everyone and call that networking. I can't tell you how many times I get resumes from people like, hey, attached, please find my resume. Let me know if you hear of anything. I don't know what you're looking for. I don't know how you think I might be helpful to you. So do the work. Think it through. What's your specific ask for each person? Believe me, you're not being annoying when you do that level of thinking. You're making it easy for me to help you. You want to make it easy for people to help you. All right? Please make sure you're tracking your outreach, right? You're doing networking, you're doing direct contact, you're talking with recruiters, you're applying for positions. Keep a spreadsheet, because when you get calls, you want to start to see, what method am I using that's getting me the most traction, right? You want to kind of learn what's working for me. Please don't allocate all of your search time to job boards. Please don't. Please try all 4 methods. And the reason I say that is the most effective searches don't just do job boards. And even if you apply, you can use direct contact or networking to get that application to the top of the pile. Don't assume everyone's too busy to help you. If you do a lot of the thinking for them ahead of time, if you make it easy for me to make an introduction or to give you feedback or to give some thought, you know, if you want to schedule 20 minutes with someone, jump on a Zoom call with them and just like be prepared with good questions. Be prepared. Respect their time and be clear about your ask. If you do that, you're already legions ahead of most people that are trying to network. And please, please don't forget you have a lot to offer. So when you're networking or when you're reaching out with a really cool cover letter, don't forget you're valuable. You're a hot commodity. You have something to bring to the table. Lead with that. Lead with the feeling of like, I can make an impact. It shifts your energy and it helps you, you know, do some things that might not be completely comfortable for you. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about optimizing your online applications, because that's really important when you're applying for positions. Okay, one of the things that people do when they're applying online is they just fill out tons and tons of applications for any and every job. That's not very effective. So to optimize your application, you want to use job boards effectively, you want to try for an internal referral, you want to optimize your resume, and you want to reach out to the potential hiring manager. That's your best way of optimizing an application. So a lot of people, all they do is apply for positions on LinkedIn. There are other job boards, okay? So in addition to the sites like Indeed and Glassdoor, and then there's the niche ones like Idealist, which focus on nonprofit, Dice does technology. There are company job boards. And here's one that a lot of people forget about is professional associations. There are lots of professional associations that have job boards. And I know from my past experience, I would often post on some of those job boards when I had openings, when I didn't have the budget to post all my openings on LinkedIn or other job boards, right? So don't give up those opportunities. And often you can leverage other members when you see those postings. And don't forget alumni job boards. Go back to your alumni organization. Most career development offices in colleges, excuse me, have job boards, okay? All right, once you see an opportunity, check your network to see if you know anyone at that company. Let them know you've applied for the position. Ask them if they would recommend you for it. That's not a big ask in most big companies because they have employee referral programs. So actually, if you got hired, that person could get a bonus for referring you. So it's not a big ask. So ask, even if that's a second or third degree connection, try to get yourself to that person, because I've very rarely had clients tell me that a person wasn't interested in doing an internal referral. Also, ask them if they might know the name of the hiring manager. Sometimes they might not know the hiring manager, but they could at least give you the hiring manager's name. And if you're very persuasive, you could ask them for their email. Now you've got the hiring manager, you know that Terry Coyne's hiring for this position, you know my email address, and now you can write a killer cover to me. Tell me you've already applied for the position online, but make your case as to why I should talk to you. Trust me, this can work. I've had a number of clients who've done this. I had one recently who forwarded me a whole email chain that started with her reaching out to a direct contact through a hiring manager who forwarded her email to another hiring manager and said, I don't think she's right for this position, but look at her resume. You might want to talk to her. Then he forwarded it to his HR rep and said, can you pull this application information? I'd like to speak with her. So it can happen, right? It can happen. Okay, so now you're ready to apply for the position. You've tried for the internal referral. Now you're ready to apply for the position. Okay, you want to be selective, right? You want to identify the best job boards for your targets. You want to respond only to positions where you meet 85 to 90% of the requirements. And you'll see why in a second. You want to set up job alerts, right? You don't want to start from scratch every day. Once you figure out your targets and your search strings, set up job alerts so you're getting notified of new jobs as they're coming in. You want to tweak your resume for the position, and you want to use a tool, if you can, called jobscan.co. Some of you may know about it. I'll explain it a little more in a second. You want to include a cover letter. You want to be strategic about the salary field, meaning when you're applying for a position online and they ask you what the salary is, you are not committing to that number for all of eternity. That's a knockout question. So our recommendation is in the salary field, put the lowest possible number that you could live with. If your lowest number is 75, don't put 50 in there. Right? It's got to be the lowest number. You're not committing to that, but you want to give yourself every opportunity not to get knocked out based on the salary question. And then you want to use networking and direct contact to reach out to the hiring manager in addition to applying. Okay, so here's what happens when you apply online. The job gets posted, you apply. Your resume and cover and application go into something called an applicant tracking system. The applicant tracking system parses your materials for keywords and matches them against the job posting. Then it gives your application a score, meaning how much of a match is your resume against the job posting. If you're not an 80% or higher match, chances are your materials don't move to the top, which goes into an HR person's inbox. So if you're not optimizing your resume, you're reducing your chances of getting contacted when you apply online. Okay, so how do you do that? Well, you start with a good, solid, targeted base resume. Remember, you create that project manager resume that's speaking to your target. All right. Then you take your resume and the job posting, you go to JobScan, you run a report that compares the two. JobScan spits out a report for you that lists, here are the keywords in the job posting that don't exist on your resume. And then you go back to your resume and you, where you can and where it makes sense, change or add skills or add words so that you can get your match rate up to 80% or higher. So this slide is showing you, this is the targeted resume and this is the tweaked resume. If I get my match rate up to 80% or higher, I'm increasing my chances of getting contacted. Okay? All right, so then I want to reach out to the hiring manager. I already kind of talked about that. If you can't get the name from an internal connection, take a guess. Who might this position report into, right? So if I'm project manager and it's in IT, I'm going to look to see, is there a PMO office? It sometimes tells you in the job posting, this position reports directly into X, all right? But you want to try and see if you can identify the name. And then you want to write that compelling cover letter that will get you noticed. Okay? All right. So do's and don'ts, I've covered these. Create saved searches, utilize more than one job board, optimize your resume for every opportunity. Try to get an internal referral, reach out to the hiring manager with a compelling pitch. Don't focus on the quantity of applications. I'll have clients say to me, I applied for 30 jobs last week and didn't hear from anybody. Well, what's the point of applying for 30 jobs if you have not optimized your resume, right? Because now it's not just a human that has to connect the dots, it's algorithms that are connecting the dots. So you've got to do that work to get past that applicant tracking system. Please don't forget to save every tweaked resume so you can refer to it when you get called for a screening, because you're tweaking it. And some you may tweak a lot. So just save the resume and say, you know, project manager resume, Fairy Godboss, right? So when I get that call, I can pull it up. Don't give up finding a way in for dream opportunities, right? If you see a posting and you're like, oh my God, I would die to get a meeting. I would just need to talk to somebody about this job. I'd be perfect for it. Keep at it. Figure out, who do I know? Who in my network might know somebody, right? Talk to good networkers. Find out how would you do with this? Because I really want to have a conversation with someone about this. Now, let's say now you've done all this and you're starting to get calls, right? You're starting to get interviews, or you're starting to set up, you know, exploratory conversations because you've done some direct contact. When you're connecting with opportunities, let go of the candidate mindset and embrace a consultant mindset. And what we're talking about there is, when you're a consultant, you're considering, what is the business problem and how can I help you solve it? When you're in candidate mode, I like to think of it as, you're kind of like in audition mode, you know, like you're auditioning and you're like, please, please, please pick me, please pick me. And you're coming from like, you know, like you're on stage. Whereas when you're in consultant mode, you're kind of got your hat on as like, how can I help you? How can I plug in? What can I do to help you solve the problems that you grapple with, right? If you think in those terms, you're much more proactive and engaging. So whenever anyone's talking to you, they're thinking about three things. How can you help me? Why would you want to work in here? And how would you fit in? Right? So with a consultant mindset, you're going in knowing that's what they're looking for. So if I'm having an interview, you know, if I'm being interviewed and they're like, so tell me a little bit about yourself, I can start off with a passion statement and say, well, you know, I'm really fortunate. I love what I do. I've had a lot of great opportunities. And I'm excited because in thinking about the work that you're doing here, I feel like I can really bring a lot of value to the initiatives on the table that are described in the job posting. Right? I'm going to just go in like, I'm your gal. I can solve your problems, right? So when you're engaging with a consultant mindset, you know, you want to think about a hypothesis. What are the things that are keeping this person up at night, right? When you run training programs, what are you always worried about? Getting the butts in the seat, right? Getting people the information they need, right? So I'm going to come in with some really good examples of how I can do that. And then you can ask questions. Do you have problems with attendance? What kinds of things do you do? So you can start to garner, what are their pain points? You want to keep the focus on the client's problem, right? You don't want to get into long conversations about, I just think this would be really great for me in my career, and I really like what it could do for me. Yeah, there's a time for that, but not when you're in that initial meeting where you're really convincing them, you need to bring me on because I can help you solve these problems, right? You want to map your past successes to examples, right, of how you've been effective. And you want to follow up, not with a thank you note, with a thoughtful proposal of maybe some ideas or suggestions you might have. You don't want to assume that the person that's talking to you has read your resume, right? You want to be prepared to talk through your resume. You don't want to wait for questions. Be prepared with your own questions and strive for a conversational vibe. You don't want to send boring cover letters. You want to send thoughtful follow-ups with additional ideas or thoughts. Once you start interviewing, it's natural to take your foot off the gas because you're feeling like you're getting traction. But I can tell you, don't do that. I tell people, until you start your first day of onboarding, I want you to keep opportunities going. I want you to keep going on interviews. I want you to keep doing what you're doing to uncover opportunities. Don't take your foot off the gas. The interview process is longer right now, so you can't afford to sit back, okay? 3 ways to ignite your search. Take a moment each day to give attention to these 3 things. Commit to the right strategies. Think about how you found jobs in the past. What approach is getting you the best results? Which approaches have you not tried yet? And ask yourself every day, am I allocating the right amount of time to the strategies that'll work best for me? 2, set yourself up for success. I want you to every day ask yourself, have I done everything I could do to get a meeting for this opportunity? What is the status of opportunities I've been pursuing? Do I need to check back in? What are 3 things I can do today to move my search forward? What 3 things did I do today? Don't forget this one. You gotta give yourself the positive reinforcement. What 3 things did I do today that I feel good about? Who else can I connect with? Speaking of connecting, if you don't have one, consider working with a coach. Not just because a coach can help step you through and help you customize your own process, but they can also help you with accountability. If you can't work with a coach, if that's not possible, find a trusted friend or colleague to hold yourself accountable to weekly or daily goals. This, a check-in kind of holds you accountable, and it really keeps you sane. Seek feedback, ask for suggestions, share frustrations and wins. Obviously, do this with people that are positive and really invested in your success. Final do's and don'ts, step back and explore different possibilities. Consider a bridge solution, right? If you're finding that the market is tight right now, you're not crazy, it's a little tight, but so think about, what else could I do? Is there a bridge solution? Could I do some consulting? Could I pick up some project work? Could I take a temporary assignment? Right? Could I do something to bridge the gap until things loosen up? I had a lot of clients who did this during the last, tight in the market about 4 years ago, and many of them, as soon as things started to open up, they went for opportunities that they thought would be better for them. You need to adjust your expectations. Response times are slower, so don't freak out if it's taking longer for people to get back to you. And also, to that end, don't expect yourself to be as productive as you normally are. There is a lot going on in the world, so be gentle with yourself. Don't engage in negative talk about lack of opportunities. You only need one good one, right? So try not to go down that rabbit hole. There's just nothing, it's not productive. Don't lose sight of what you have to offer. If you forget, reach out to a trusted colleague and ask them, what did you like best about working for me? All right, I got in there under the wire. I just wanted to cover everything. So I left enough time for questions.
This is wonderful. You did a great job. I especially loved when we're talking about just don't get discouraged and give yourself that positive reinforcement of what you're doing, because so many times it can be really hard when you're looking at the big picture. You don't have a job offer yet, but really it's looking at how are you breaking it down? What good things are you doing now? What great habits are you doing that contribute to the longer term? So I love that. In terms of questions, we do have a couple.
Sure.
The first one, super easy one. Do you have a copy of the tracking template you can share?
The tracking template.
For,
Oh, I might be able to dig one up, but how could I share that, Taylor, if I wanted to? I can't dig it out right now.
that's okay. We can probably post it in when we post the webinar.
Okay. I'll make a note of that.
Yeah. The next question is, do you have any recommendations for narrowing down a single industry to a single industry when your target position is found in most types of companies?
Yes, great question. Pick industries that are growing. Pick industries that are growing and hiring. So don't pick industries like publishing unless you're just diehard publishing or media. You want to look at industries that are growing or stable during difficult job markets. Industries like insurance tends to be pretty stable. Financial services tends to be kind of stable. Healthcare can be stable. So what you want to think about is, what are industries that are doing okay right now? And then obviously from there, pick the ones that appeal to you. I felt maybe some people were like, oh my gosh, financial services or insurance? Are you kidding me? But the other thing is, I'd challenge you, what you think you might know about an industry may not actually be current. So I would definitely go for industries that are growing. And a quick tip about that, LinkedIn, if you just Google LinkedIn industries, get a list of how LinkedIn categorizes different industries. That will help you a lot so that you can use those to pick the ones you want to target.
Okay, so that's really helpful. I think the next question is on a lot of our minds. The tips are very useful, but COVID has eliminated a lot of positions in my field. What's your advice for looking for employment you need versus the luxury of a job search tailored towards your wants?
Okay, so in that regard, you really want to break down your skill set. What are the most marketable skills you have right now, right? So for example, I may be an event planner, and it's like, well, nobody's really planning events. But event planning is really project management, right? So I want to break out what are the skills associated with what I do now, and how might I be able to use those skills to take on a different position. The other thing I would suggest is think about project work, think about consulting, think about hourly work, and think about people that you may have worked for in the past. Often when your budget gets frozen for hiring, you still have money, managers still have money to bring in contract workers, consultants, project people. So consider looking for project-based work. There are also sites like Flex Jobs that you want to look for job boards that could potentially just focus on hourly work and what are the types of assignments you could take on based on your skills and past experience. You got to kind of break it down. There is a site called ONET, O*NET, and that helps you. You can go in there and you can type in your skills, and it will provide you with suggestions of different types of jobs you could do based on your skills. That might be a place to start. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, and thank you. And so for the next question is, it's pretty basic, but maybe I missed this, but how does one go about finding out the hiring manager?
Okay, so there isn't a hard and fast rule about how you do that. Obviously, if you know someone at the company, even if it's the receptionist, sometimes that person can help you figure out who the hiring manager could be. So the first thing I think about is, who are the people I've reported to? What are the titles of people that I have reported to in the past? So in my own experience, I've reported to a CIO, right? So I would on LinkedIn do some searching for CIO at Acme Industries. And then I would look down and I would try, you have to do some detective work, but there's also databases you may have access to, like there's Dun & Bradstreet, there's Hoover's, there's LexisNexis. You may actually get access to those through your library. The library often provides you digital access to some of these databases. And then you would search CIO, Acme Industries. You'd Google that and you'd say, oh, Terry Coyne is the CIO, and then try to find their email address. If their email address isn't publicized, you can find an email address for someone at the company, and that's how you can figure out what the syntax is for email, like tcoin@acme.com. It's not cut and dry. Sometimes you luck out and you know right away. But I have to say, I've also had clients that the hiring manager will just forward that on to the real person. If that isn't possible or doesn't seem likely, try a senior person in the group that you would be in. Like try, if you're a project manager, just try finding a senior project manager and reaching out to them and saying, hey, I know there's an opening, might you be able to help connect me to the hiring manager?
Yeah, and that's great advice too. And having a decade of sales experience, I would also say that there are a number of tools you can use too, like LinkedIn Sales Navigator. You can look and you can sort by the field, the business unit the person's in, and then you can also sort by title. So if you're a manager, you can sort and you can look at directors and you can weed through that way as well. And
is that free?
You can sign up for a 30-day trial.
That's great. Also, you can do LinkedIn Premium for 30 days. Great tip. Both of those things, you can really get a ton of information if you just do the 30 days.
So we've had a lot of questions around like temporary positions and how to handle them on your resume. Also a really interesting question. I was laid off at the beginning of the pandemic. My employer recently contacted me about having my job back in a slightly different capacity. I'm considering coming back, but also want to keep my options open, but hate this whole job search thing. How can I address my shyness and apprehension about putting myself out there?
Okay, so the first part of that question, so they want to bring you back in a slightly different capacity. I would figure out if that capacity is acceptable to you. If it's not, then I would consider going back so you have the job and then continuing pursuing a search for a job that makes sense. I would, however, try hard to have them not change your title or your level if that's possible, right? The thing is, it's not as big of a deal right now because it's happening a lot. So you can tell that story. But if you can keep the title and go back with different responsibilities and then keep your search going, that would probably be the best thing. If you're doing temporary work or taking on a series of temporary assignments, instead of on your resume going, Acme, 4 months, Fairy Godboss, 3 months, Get 5, 2 months, you can have a section. Instead of saying that, you can say consulting assignments, and then a brief description, took on a series of projects related to X, Y, and Z, and then representative clients. And then you could put Acme, Fairy Godboss, Get 5, but represent it as one job on your resume. And on your LinkedIn as well. I think that was all the pieces of that question.
Yeah, and that's great too, because someone asked also, like, how do you handle an interim position and then being laid off? Does that go on the resume, even though it was never a position that they wanted to pursue?
Yes, it depends on how long you did it. If it's been more than 6 months, you should put the interim position down. If the interim position was 2 months and you're done with it and you're still looking, you don't necessarily have to put that down. And again, you want to position it on your resume to show maybe it brought out soft skills, so just think creatively about, I've had people we put on their resumes, they had to take time off and they had to be a caregiver. And, to explain that gap, they put caregiving and then they put bullet points of the primary pieces that would support their skill set. So the key is be creative about it and don't feel like you're doing something wrong by staying involved in the workforce. It's always a positive thing. You just have to tell the story through that lens.
So really helpful. I think one last question we're probably all really curious about. What is your advice on resume length?
Here's my advice. Don't jam it onto one page. Please don't jam it onto one page, and don't have it be 3 pages. So my sweet spot for resume length is 1.5 pages to 2 pages. But what you really want to do is you want to front load your resume with the most important things the person needs to know. So don't put your address. You want the title. If there's industries you're targeting, a brief summary statement. You want expertise or skills up front so they can check, check, check. She's got all of this. And then jump into your professional background. Everything that's really critical needs to be front loaded in the top third because the average person only looks at your resume for 8 to 10 seconds.
That was really helpful. We definitely had a lot of engagement, a couple questions that were not answered, and I can always send those to you afterwards and we can see how best to engage.
Sure.
Terry, thank you so much. We really appreciate you sharing your time and your expertise with us. Audience, thank you so much for being super engaged. Terry, we really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome, and best of luck to everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Goodbye.